What if you're told some of the most ignored trucks on the market are also some of the most reliable? New trucks are hitting $60,000 and above. More tech, higher costs, and even small repairs aren't cheap anymore. At the same time, there are trucks sitting on used lots and private listings, some of them under $10,000, getting ignored every day. Not because they don't work, but because they don't stand out. This video breaks down 5 of those pickups that stay cheap, get passed over, and still keep going. Starting from number 5, Mazda B Series from 1994 to 2009. A lot of older pickups disappeared quietly over the years. Some became too expensive to fix, some got parked permanently, and some simply stopped being worth keeping on the road. But every now and then, one still shows up in traffic that almost nobody talks about anymore. The Mazda B Series is one of those trucks. It usually sits low in search results, gets ignored on used lots, and rarely becomes the first choice when someone starts looking for a pickup. Most attention goes toward larger truck names, newer designs, or anything that simply looks newer from the outside. That works in favor of the B Series. Because while other trucks gained attention and higher prices, this one stayed in the background long enough to remain affordable. One reason many buyers overlook it is the badge on the front. A lot of people never even realize how closely related it is to the Ford Ranger from the same years. Underneath, many of the core mechanical parts follow a very similar setup, which gives the truck a much stronger long-term reputation than people expect at first glance. That connection matters because it changes how the truck behaves over time. Instead of relying on overly complicated systems, the B Series keeps things direct. The controls feel familiar immediately, the driving experience stays uncomplicated, and the truck focuses more on basic use than trying to feel modern. For drivers who prefer straightforward vehicles, that simplicity becomes a major advantage after years of ownership. The used market is also where this pickup starts making more sense. Many trucks in the same price range already look worn out beyond repair or come with expensive hidden issues waiting underneath. The B Series tends to avoid some of that because expectations around it are lower from the start. It never became a must-have truck, so pricing stayed calmer compared to more popular pickups. That creates situations where decent examples still appear at surprisingly low prices. Another thing that helps it stay around is repair accessibility. Mechanics have seen these trucks for years, many parts are shared with other models, and the overall design avoids turning small maintenance jobs into major projects. And the next pickup on this list takes a completely different approach, because unlike this one, almost everybody recognizes the name immediately. Number 4. Toyota Tacoma from 1995 to 2004. Some cheap trucks become cheap because people stop trusting them. The Toyota Tacoma usually ends up cheaper for a different reason. A lot of older owners keep them for years, which means cleaner examples often cost more than expected. But once mileage climbs high or the exterior starts looking rough, many buyers move on immediately without paying attention to what the truck is still capable of. That is where these older Tacomas start becoming interesting. Even with worn paint, faded interiors, or years of use behind them, many still continue handling daily driving without turning into constant repair projects. That long-term reputation is a major reason the Tacoma stayed respected for so long among people who care more about dependability than appearance. Another thing that separates it from many newer trucks is how manageable everything feels. The size stays practical, visibility stays open, and nothing inside feels overloaded with unnecessary controls. The truck was built during a period when pickups still focused heavily on utility, instead of trying to feel like luxury vehicles. That older design approach becomes more noticeable over time. Modern trucks became larger, more expensive, and more complicated underneath. Repair costs climbed with them. Meanwhile, these older Tacomas stayed relatively direct in how they were built, which helped many remain on the road far longer than people expected. The used market also treats these trucks differently depending on condition. Clean, low-mileage examples can still attract attention quickly, but rougher ones often get overlooked because buyers assume high mileage automatically means problems are close behind. That assumption is one reason some of these trucks still end up sitting in lower price ranges despite their long-term reputation. And moving to number 3, the next pickup on this list stayed so consistent over the years that many people can barely tell older models apart from newer ones at first glance. Number 3, Nissan Frontier from 2005 to 2019. Some trucks don't get ignored because they are bad. They get ignored because nothing about them feels exciting on first look. The Nissan Frontier falls into that exact situation. It stays in the used market for long periods, not because it cannot perform, but because buyers usually move past it in search of something more modern or more visually appealing. That steady overlook is what keeps the price down. In real use, the Frontier has always stayed fairly consistent. It did not go through constant redesigns in the same way many other pickups did, so the core feel of the truck remained familiar across many years. That kind of stability is rare in a market where vehicles keep changing rapidly. Mechanically, it avoids unnecessary complexity. The focus stays on straightforward engine layouts and simple operation, instead of overloading the truck with advanced systems that add cost later on. That approach is one reason many of these trucks continue showing up in everyday driving even after long ownership periods. The used market situation is also important here. Because attention is usually directed toward more popular nameplates, the Frontier often sits lower on priority lists. That creates a gap where prices can stay relatively low compared to what the truck is still capable of doing in normal conditions. Even now, these trucks are still commonly used for daily transport, light work, and general driving needs. They don't attract much attention on the road, but they continue performing the same basic tasks without needing constant changes or upgrades. And the next truck on the list shifts the focus again, because unlike this one, it carries a name that almost every truck buyer already recognizes immediately. Number 2 is the Ford Ranger from 1998 to 2011. Walk through almost any older used vehicle lot, and this truck doesn't usually stand in the front row. It tends to sit further back, not because it stopped working, but because attention goes elsewhere first. Bigger trucks, newer interiors, and more modern styling usually take the focus before this one even gets a proper look. The Ford Ranger from these years stayed in a very basic design phase. Nothing about it feels complicated or overbuilt. The layout, the size, and the structure all stay focused on simple transport rather than comfort or advanced features. That simplicity is also what kept it in circulation longer than expected. Many of these trucks ended up being used for small daily work routines instead of being replaced quickly. Short-distance hauling, basic utility jobs, and general transport are the kind of roles it continued filling without requiring anything extra from the system. Because the design avoids heavy complexity, long-term ownership doesn't turn into a chain of unpredictable issues as quickly as more modern setups sometimes do. Fewer systems mean fewer things interacting together under pressure. The used market reflects a very quiet pattern here. Units in average condition often stay listed longer simply because demand is directed toward more popular or newer-looking pickups. That's why it still appears in use today in different working environments, even after many years have passed since production ended. And finally, the number 1 on this list is the Toyota Hilux from 1997 to 2005. The Toyota Hilux from this era built its reputation in a very simple way. It kept working in places where breakdowns were not an option. Its design focuses on basic mechanical strength instead of complicated systems, which is why it handles long use cycles without becoming overly dependent on electronics or fragile components. The engine setup, drivetrain layout, and overall build quality were all designed around durability under repeated stress, not comfort or luxury features. That is also why many examples from this generation are still found in daily service even after years of heavy use. It doesn't rely on anything complex to function properly, and that simplicity is what keeps it consistent over time when compared to newer trucks that introduce more systems.